Today I'm going to tell you how to perfect your Cyno. This is not a narrative-driven video, meaning that I'm not gonna stay here and try to convince you that Cyno is this or that, because I think that most of you at this point already know where he kind of stands in the meta. He surely is a character that has gone through some changes during his lifespan, especially in terms of additions to his teams, but for the most part, his positives and flaws have stayed the same in the past year. And since they've been repeated to death, basically by the community, I'm not gonna stay here and just repeat them over and over. Instead, I'm going to talk to all the people who already have Cyno or would like to have him in the future and tell you about his best artifacts, teams, gameplay techs, and blah blah blah. With a special focus on Cyno and Furina teams, since I bet most of you are interested in that. So, the first thing when it comes to any character in Genshin is a combo. What is a combo? It's a string of attacks that allows a character to deal damage. Cyno is a very unique character in this sense, because his combos vary based on the artifact set he's using. Specifically, with the Thundering Fury artifact set, Cyno will be able to use more elemental skills per rotation compared to other sets, and so his combos differ here. The thing with Cyno is that once you activate his elemental burst, you have to pay close attention to how his first passive works. During his combos, every few seconds, a big circle will appear on screen, and if you use the elemental skill button while that is on your screen, the ability will deal extra damage and your burst duration will be extended. So basically you want to time your elemental skills accordingly. Note that timing accordingly doesn't necessarily mean that you have to wait for the big circle to appear on screen every time before you use your elemental skill. It just means that you have to structure your combos in a way that you can trigger it as many times as possible. With Thundering Fury, a combo that I think is rather simple to execute is one normal attack and an elemental skill, and then 4 normal attacks and an elemental skill 6 times. This combo, which takes around 15 seconds to be executed, is both great because it allows your Cyno to regenerate a lot of energy because you get 7 elemental skill procs in total, and because it grants you 2 or 3 passive procs in total in the rotation. While there are many variations of this, I personally prefer this one because it is just the same combo string repeated over and over again, so it's very easy to remember. Alternatively, for the other artifact sets, there is this other combo which I won't spell out. This combo will allow you to get around 4 elemental skills during Cyno's burst, and around 3 passive procs. If you get Cyno's Constellation one, which makes his normal attacks faster, then I guess you might be thrown off a bit in terms of timing, but in my experience it has not been an issue. Since I talked about different artifacts, let's see how they compare to each other. Let's make it very quick. Thundering Fury is the golden choice for Cyno, because it provides both the most energy and the best damage. Gilded Dreams comes very close if you're playing Cyno in double Electro and the energy requirements are very low, but otherwise, Thundering Fury all the way. The Marashusei artifact set is also very usable if you're using Furina on team. But the main issue here is that it gives a lot of crit rate, so if you use weapons like Deathmatch or Scarlet, then managing all that crit rate on Cyno becomes very tricky. Basically, just keep spamming the strongbox for Thundering Fury pieces. Build-specific stats are very dependent on what team you're using, so I'll just talk about that later. Weapons-wise, kind of the usual, you got the Scarlet, the signature, which is the best option across the board, always much better than all the other weapons. Pull for it if you love Cyno, it's great. But he also has a lot of 4-star options that are pretty good. A new one being Ballad of the Fjords, the new Battle Pass weapon, which you can't get at Refinement 5 yet, but once you will be able to, it will be one of the best options for this character. Otherwise, little old white tassel still holding strong. Well, kind of. It's an option. It won't give you extremely exciting results compared to the stronger options, but it's just nice to be able to use a 3-star weapon on a carry. Now, the thing you've been waiting for all along, Cyno teams. Goes without saying that I'm starting with Furina talk here, the new character. Furina is obviously a very strong character, but on Cyno teams, she's even more of a perfect fit than she usually is. The reason is that Cyno is one of the few carries that already had a team-wide healer in his best team, even before Furina came out. With other characters or carries, it is more of a trade-off thing, because you're removing two characters from the team that were presumably strong offensively to add Furina, and a team-wide healer that without Furina is not really bringing much in terms of offense. On the other hand, with Baiju, Cyno doesn't have to go through such a drastic change, because Baiju was already significant for him. As a result, in terms of DPS increase, he is one of the characters that gains the most from Furina. Compared to the previous best double Dendro Cyno teams with Xingqiu, the Furina variant is different. The main difference is that you're getting fewer Hyperblooms with Furina, but higher quicken uptime. High Hyperbloom counts is what allowed Xingqiu to previously overtake Yelan on these types of teams, because with him you can get a lot of Hyperblooms and also pretty consistent quicken uptime. This became better for him back when Baiju released, and there was going to be enough Dendro application on this double Dendro team that you were going to be able to generate a lot of Hyperblooms without disrupting quicken that much with Xingqiu. Before that, it was always a thing of, oh, you lose some Hyperblooms but you gain some quickens with Yelan, while with Xingqiu it's the opposite, but for the most part the damage is similar, but with double Dendro, Xingqiu prevailed. Furina is actually kind of similar to Yelan. Actually, she's even worse, because she can generate even fewer Hyperblooms than Yelan can, but she's so strong that it doesn't matter. Even with 8, 9, 10 fewer Hyperblooms compared to the Xingqiu variant, with Furina you get so much more raw damage that the total team DPS is higher. Cyno himself is actually not doing more damage compared to the Xingqiu variant, but Nahida is, and Furina is stronger than Xingqiu in terms of damage, so it's a gain. The team also feels really good in terms of playstyle, because while Furina doesn't necessarily completely fake Cyno's issues like the multi-wave thing, she does make it better. The reason is mostly that Furina has longer uptime compared to Xingqiu, so you get more distributed damage throughout the entire rotation. This is especially noticeable at the start of the rotation, where if you need some initial damage to clear a wave before you go with a burst with Cyno, you can do it now with Furina and some Hyperblooms. In terms of where you should use Furina's burst in the rotation, a thing I've heard a lot is that since Cyno has long rotations, it's better to use Furina's burst at second 5 or 6 to have better uptime during Cyno's window. However, this is not necessarily true, because you also have on team Nahida and Baiju, who if used earlier in the rotation will have shorter uptime for Cyno with their main buffing capabilities, which is also bad. If you have Nahida's Constellation 1 for example, you can use her burst earlier compared to Furina's, and it would be a gain, but otherwise it doesn't make a huge difference. But what if you don't have Baiju? Do you have to pull for Baiju to play this team? Well, you have two alternatives, a bad one and a good one. The good one is Yayao. Yayao takes a bit longer than Baiju to heal the whole team because of how her burst works, but for the most part she can replace him and just be a downgrade to him while not changing the team structure or how it functions. On the other hand, Cookie feels particularly miserable because you're building her with elemental mastery here, otherwise you will get low Hyperbloom damage from her, and this really makes her healing shit. And I know that theoretically you can use something like Prototype Ember or Nahida to add more healing to the team in this scenario, but for the most part you'll be facing a situation like this one. Cookie is not impossible to use with Furina, but you really need a team that allows you to swap freely between units to play around the fact she only heals the active character, and clearly it's not the case for Cyno. So yeah, Furina, very good. Very good. Meanwhile, if we delve deeper into the research of Cyno teams, we will find options like Chaos or Double Electro Hyperbloom, which became kind of obsolete now. Chaos, usually played with Thoma, has a few advantages compared to other options, like you having a shielder or you getting some early vaporizes with Yelan, which is front-loaded damage, but other than that, in terms of Cyno damage, it is not even comparable, honestly. Then you have Double Electro Hyperbloom with Cookie, which in terms of playstyle doesn't really have any advantages compared to other options, but in terms of building you do get lower energy requirements on Cyno, which is nice. I want to conclude this segment with some Quicken talk. Yeah, Quicken Cyno. Ooh. There is this saying that Cyno is completely awful in Quicken and should never be played, but in reality it's just that the Quicken teams are weaker compared to the Hyperbloom teams, But there are some interesting options. These options don't include Xingqiu to me, because he is a complete damage sink, and that's not ideal to Cyno on Aggravate since he's already starving for damage there. There is a variant with Kazuha and Fischl that I like, and it has a rotation of 25 seconds, which allows Fischl to use odds twice. The issue I've seen the most in many of the Quick and Cyno rotation is that a lot of people just use Fischl once there, and then go in with Cyno and use Burst, and the rotation is like 20 seconds long. By having a longer setup time, you're allowing odds to have more uptime, and most importantly, you're allowing Fischl to snapshot Kazuha's buffs. The result that you get is a team that will deal a lot of damage in the first part of Cyno's window, and then it will decline by the end of it when Kazuha's buffs come to an end. Lastly, I'm not going to talk about constellations extensively, but I'm just gonna mention that if you want to pull for the Constellation too, it is a very big improvement to Cyno's raw damage, so it will be felt incredibly much in the Aggravate teams, but in the Hyperbloom teams it is still very good, just not as impressive, so consider this. So this is it. Let me know in the comments below if you have Cyno or you're planning to pull for him, and peace.